Okay, good afternoon. My name is Michael Dusumu, and I'm very glad to have everyone in here today. We just wait to see if we have just a few more people joining us, and then we'll be able to, actually get started. I can see loads of people joining in already. Yeah. When you have 10 provinces, three territories, you're duolingual, you're culturally diverse, you're blessed with extensive natural resources, you're the world's second largest country by size. You have a highly developed economy. Your economy is the 10th largest in the entire world. 82% of your population is urban. Then you are Canada. With a population of 38 million people, only twice about the size of Lagos, but wait for it, 10,000 times the size of Lagos. Welcome to Canada. Today, I will be discussing the final part of our Instagram trials session, which started last week with a looking at the proprietary of continuing to choose international education in the face of COVID pandemic in the world. And then, of course, on Tuesday this week, we did look at the effect of COVID on post-secondary school education, looking at the further education bit, and specifically looking at university enrollment in the light of students' inability to join to write exams either because they've been postponed or they've been cancelled. Today, which is all the culmination of our Instagram series, we will be looking at vision. We'll be focusing on Canada, and we'll be looking at what opportunities are there in Canada after COVID, just as Nigeria and the rest of the world is in the same shoes as Canada. At Mood Education, our mission has always been, and I mean, this has been refined many times, but we've always been a business that is interested in, helping to create channels for the development of the human innate potentials, and to also provide grounds for him to release these developed talents for the development of himself and his community. The vision of MOD is to build futures. We've been doing this for 14 years, and we're very, very excited that we have an opportunity to impact our society in the way that we have done in the last 14 years. Today, like I said, like I said, we'll be focused on Canada, and I'll be joined by two gentlemen who know all about Canada. In actual fact, we're going to try technology today. I'm based here in, just north of London. I'm in Luton, and I'm going to be joined by Rob from Canada, and then of course I'm also going to be joined by Stuart Rennie in Dublin, Scotland. So we're going to have, and of course I'm sure majority of our audience today are in Nigeria, scattered all over Nigeria. So this is actually this is a truly continental experience, and I'm looking forward to ensuring that our audience learn the most out of this today. Without further ado, I'm going to get right into it. We try as much as possible to make this very interactive. So I'm going to bring on very shortly my first guest, Rob. Rob is a senior manager at Carleton University, and he's going to, he's on ground in Canada, and he's going to be able to give us some insight as to how the country is dealing with the COVID pandemic, and of course, more importantly, beyond COVID, and that is the resilience nature of the of us human beings. We think we know we acknowledge the challenges that we face, but more importantly, we think about what next, because we believe, just as in many cases in the past, we're going to come through this, and we're all united as humans, that we're all going to win this war together. So how is Canada preparing for this? What does it mean for vast majority of people who think of Canada as a home, even though they are not in Canada right now? So this is what we're going to try and do today. Um, like I said, we're going to try and make this as interactive as possible. So do please send your questions in, as many of them as possible, and we will try to do justice to answer as many of them as we can. Um, whilst I get on with this, I will just, okay, I'd just like to invite Rob, but while I'm doing that, I will, yeah. While I'm doing that, just to put in perspective what it means what Canada means. Personally, I've got family ties to Canada, so I do know Canada very, very well. Like I said, I've got family ties to Canada, and I've been all over the place. And it's Rob. Good afternoon. My first question to you, very interestingly, like I said, on the streets of Vancouver, on the streets of Montreal, on the streets of Toronto, everywhere you go in Canada, it is truly multicultural. I mean, I've seen loads of people from different places. In Lagos, thousands of people I know will call Canada home, even though they're not there right now. For such a small country of 37 million people, though as large as you are, what is it that accounts for such pull power? Where did that all come from? Why Canada?
Yeah, that's a great question, Michael. So hi, everybody. Greetings to you today from Ottawa, Canada's national capital city. It's a pleasure to have a chance to speak with you virtually. I know some of you are, most of you are probably in Nigeria, some in the UK, and some in other locations as well. So while we're all probably in our homes, we can still come together, and I think that's a tremendous opportunity. So yeah, Michael, thank you so much for that introduction and for that great question. My own family also came to Canada. My parents did anyways in the 1960s. I think they were attracted to coming to Canada, and I think their story is not unique to them. I think a lot of people find and see a lot of opportunity here. Because as you noted at the beginning, quite rightly, Canada is a physically massive country. I mean, we have the second biggest territory in the world, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, all the way up north to the Arctic. It's a big, beautiful, diverse country. And one that I think hasn't really hit its full potential yet. So while we have some impressive accomplishments.
That's scary. That's scary.
Yeah. It's a work in progress. So a lot of opportunities to grow, to develop. And I think one of the things people really like about Canada, as you say, because it is such a diverse country with so many people with their own unique cultures, but also proud of being Canadian. You can see yourself here. You can make a home for yourself here. You can connect, and you can really follow your dreams. And I think that's something that's very much intrinsic to the Canadian context.
Yeah. Wow, quite interesting. I will, my follow-up question to that will be, in terms of the most topical issue in the world right now, how is Canada affected by the COVID, and what has that changed in the Canadian society?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess it's a great place to start. I hope everybody's healthy and safe right now, given this global pandemic. Such a strange and unexpected developments. Canada, like all countries in the world, has had to respond. But I'm really proud of the response that we've seen here so far, both from our federal government, which is responsible for Canada, its borders, and Canada as a whole, but also at the provincial level, because of course Canada, like Nigeria, has various independent provinces, and at that provincial level, that's where we see a big response as well. So it's hard to give you a reply to that question that isn't specific to the location. So being based here in Ontario, Canada's largest province, a major part of the economy sector found here in Ontario. We are one of the larger, more impacted regions of the country, both Ontario and Quebec. But at the same time, we're seeing a really well-coordinated response, both from the provinces and from the federal governments. At this stage, the number of cases is not increasing. So while people are still working from home and we continue to have a lot of restrictions in place in terms of limiting the spread, we're seeing all of those efforts bear fruit. So the number of new people getting sick, et cetera, continues to remain flat. And then
Wow.
because of that, we're looking at starting to reopen the economy. So over the next few weeks, we'll see a number of currently closed businesses probably resume. And that should, as long as things go well, continue to improve over the weeks ahead. So we're hoping to see that continue.
Right, right. And just to put in perspective, 86% of Canadian population are urban, and four of the 10 provinces in Canada actually house about 76% of Canadian population. So
Yeah.
the Canada is quite a big place. But just to put it in perspective, for those who might not know who might not understand what it means to situate Canada's situation around where Rob is described, Quebec and Ontario are two of the largest provinces in Canada, along with British Columbia. So what is happening in those two provinces will pretty much be reflective of what's happening in the other provinces and territories in Canada. So my third question to you, Rob, will be, I know you're from Carleton University. So as an international university, obviously you do have students who are studying with you right now. What has the COVID response of the university been, particularly to those international students who are not locals in Canada?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer is we continue to evolve and manage the situation based on the ground circumstances, always
Right.
looking for best practice advice from local public health agencies and from the federal government and provincial governments as well. So I think over the past several weeks, a number of initiatives have been brought forward to deal with the situation as it unfolds, but also always, first and foremost, to care for our campus community. So looking at the needs of faculty, staff, and students, and being particularly aware of the interesting, unique circumstances that international students face being so far from home. So being able to support them through each step of the pandemic and to be able to provide unique assistance. So I think one of the first things we saw was the shift from on-campus in-person learning to distance learning,
Right.
being able to offer a flexible number of ways to complete courses that were in progress. So distance exams, assignments instead of final exams, etc. But always being aware of what would put people in potentially harmful situations and
Right.
mitigating that. So, distance as much as possible. And then working with people on a case-by-case basis in terms of where they are and how they could, get back to their homes, or if they're staying in Canada longer. So putting distancing in place in our residences, providing enhanced support through our international student services, both health support, but also health and counseling. So of course, being away from home, being worried about your families and yourself, being able to support students with their questions as they progress along those lines. And of course, at this stage, looking at where we are now and what we might expect in the weeks ahead, and working with incoming students to give them everything they need to know that they'll be able to start their studies in the fall, and that Carleton's prepared and created circumstances that protects their health and safety.
Right. Thank you. I mean, thank you very much for your answer to my question. I'm going to be taking questions, and I'll be providing answers as we get along. Somebody asked if this session is only for Nigerians. Obviously, this person is not in Nigeria at the moment. I've used examples of Lagos a lot because I think majority of our audience will be based in Lagos. But of course, wherever you are, the information that we're providing is not for Nigerians only. It is, it's global. So regardless of where you are, you're more than welcome to join us and stay on this session, and you will, just learn as much as anyone else. So Rob, my next question to you will be, there's a lot of uncertainty, I mean, not just in Canada, but the whole world, about how COVID is going to evolve. But what sort of planning is the university doing regarding its fall admission? Is that still going to happen? Knowing that we're at a time when we're not sure what's going to happen over the next month or two or year with regards to COVID. What is the university's thinking regarding, new international students that will be interested in coming into the university?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one that occupies a lot of time and attention these days. The first thing I'll say is we are very much offering courses, continuing studies, bringing in new international students. So
Right.
whether you're a current Carleton student looking to enter second, third, or fourth year, or if you're a prospective student, potentially one with an application to Carleton or even an offer.
Right.
For sure, Carleton is proceeding with learning opportunities this fall. What that looks like might be up for discussion. So we're continuing to watch the circumstances both here in Ontario, within Canada as a whole, and around the world as well. And so looking for different ways that we can mitigate risk for students. So a number of different possibilities are on the table at this stage, but the one common denominator really is that people's health and safety is our primary concern. So how we offer our course content when students arrive on campus and the type of supports that are put in place both within our housing on campus and across the campus as a whole, currently being explored. The good news, though, is as decisions are made, we are sharing that in a really clear and open way. So for people looking to connect with Carleton on this, through our main landing page, carleton.ca, and also through our international admissions site, we have most recent updates through our frequently asked questions. So as we sort of finalize some of these outstanding questions, we'll be in touch with students on a regular basis to make sure people know. But overall, definitely learning needs to continue. We understand people don't want to put their lives on hold, and we'll be supporting our students through each step of that process.
There's a question here, and I imagine will be one of the most important questions on the minds of a lot of our audience and people on the everywhere in the world. I would assume. I mean, considering the strong pull of Canada, I mean, online platform for learning, fantastic opportunity provided by universities, but the real interest of students, I will imagine, will be to study on campus. And the question here that people actually think, yeah, they understand there's online provision made. This is particularly important for students who are currently studying right now. But for prospective new students, I think the question for them is more around is the university preparing to receive new international students on campus in the fall? So I think that's the question.
Yeah, I agree. That is the question. And I think it's one that has yet to be answered, to be completely honest. What I would say is whether classes begin on campus in September, as is usually the case, or whether there's a gradual start, a hybrid between arriving in September or a little bit later in the term, or if classes start even later, people will be on campus at some point in the future once it's safe enough for that to be the case. So we certainly understand that international students investing in education, going overseas, are doing so because they're looking for this intercultural experience, learning from so we will be able to provide that throughout their studies. We just have to be mindful of health and safety and what the best practice ends up looking like. So we all remain very hopeful that a resumption of normal studies will be possible this September. And that's certainly the primary goal. But of course, we'll have to take our cues from our local health agencies, from our government, and from the other circumstances beyond the Canadian borders as well.
With regards to receiving new international students, are there protocols that are put in place right now which a prospective new student needs to be aware of? Say, for example, does a student need to start preparing to take the COVID-19 test as part of their preparation to come to Canada? I know there are health, as part of the visa requirements to Canada, the Canadian High Commission will typically ask students to provide some health results, which will be gotten after some tests carried out. Do you envisage COVID-19 tests being included as part of those checks, or as part of those health checks that will be imposed on students from overseas?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's possible, I guess. At this stage, I think the government and the study permit process, that hasn't happened at this moment. Whether or not that comes to be something that they start asking for in the future remains to be seen. We do understand that the Canadian study permit continues to be processed. And so students that are sort of in that processing line would be receiving decisions based on current requirements. And those requirements continue to stand. If that does change in the future, I suppose they'd have to get that information out in a timely way to allow for people to actually be able to do that and have reasonably access to testing locally.
Okay. more questions here for us. Well, before we go to more questions from the audience, I've got to ask. There's a bit of good news. Nigeria is leading the world right now with regards to the introduction of what is called the NSE. NSE refers to Nigeria Student Express. It's a pilot scheme that is being run by the Canadian Immigration Authorities to fast track the process of accessing and getting through the visa process to Canada, which currently stands at a very arduous something like 16 weeks. This is not being done anywhere else in the world, so this is only being piloted in Nigeria. So it's some good news. There's information rolled out already, and this will include some standard requirements to meet, in addition to possession of a secured English language test. Shout out to MOD IELTS. So if you're a student of MOD and you need to obviously get on the NSC, obviously MOD Education will be able to give you some head start with taking your IELTS exam as part of NSC. So Rob, do you want to take our audience through what that means, both to you as an institution, and of course what it means to the wider Canadian education system, with judging from the international viewpoint?
Yeah, it's really wonderful news. As a university that's been traveling to and meeting with prospective students in Nigeria for a number of years now, this was the one piece that we always wanted to see movement on, because we know that the Canadian processing is so much longer than other locations. So it's our anticipation and understanding that this should make a big difference for students in terms of having visas approved, and also as a student and working with parents as a family, being able to make those plans to come to Canada. It's a big decision. It's one that requires quite a lot of planning. So having that important piece secured much faster will make a big difference. So all I can really say is that we're really, really pleased that our government is behind this. The reason we've been traveling to Nigeria for such a long time is we've seen outstanding students from right across the country coming to Carleton. It isn't a new phenomenon. We've been hosting great Nigerian students at the university for a good number of years now. So because of that, we were really enticed to come and see for ourselves, and just through speaking with students and families, but also having conversations where we know, okay, we've applied to Canada and it's maybe, looking like a great option for us, but we still have applications into the UK and the US and maybe other countries. And so, if the visa for Canada is going to take 16 weeks and I get a visa in 2 weeks, sometimes that's a big difference. So we think this will level the playing field and will, allow for Canada to remain a really strong option.
In terms of option, what NSC means to Canada is actually can be put in context when you juxtapose that against how long it takes to get a US visa, for example, or a UK visa, which are the major competing destinations to Canada. In the US, you obviously get a visa on the same day. With UK, you can pay for a priority service, which can give you a visa in 24 hours or 48 hours, as the case may be. So this is really, I think the NSA is a major game changer for Canada, and I think it's absolutely a welcome development. So we have a question here. Somebody wants to know what the admission committee looks for when considering candidates for postgraduate studies.
Postgraduate studies, that's a good question. So my role at the university is I'm situated within the undergraduate admissions office, and because of that, it's easy to speak broadly about what we're looking for, because all of our undergraduate students apply through the same office, and we're able to sort of be very involved in that process. But master's and PhD applicants apply to the university centrally, but then the documentation is distributed across the various departments and programs, and each one is assessed by faculty members based on criteria that can be quite diverse. What I can speak to in terms of like the common denominators across grad programs is really having a very high GPA from your undergraduate studies would be important. So generally speaking, if you're looking at a 4.0 scale, a minimum of a 3.0, and then beyond that, because the majority of our degrees at the master's level would be 2-year thesis research-based programs. So the type of research that you have an interest in doing at the university, and whether that fits with the research strengths that we have. So usually they're looking for that match between good academic results from an undergraduate degree, common research interests that we can support and that adds value to the programs. Beyond that, there are other factors, sometimes including English proficiency, sometimes some of those standard tests like the GMAT or the GRE, or for our architecture school or portfolio. So there may be other requirements as well. For any of your students that are looking for that type of information, I definitely invite follow-up after this, and I can be a conduit between myself and our graduate studies for those clear directions.
Right. So if you're interested in graduate entry into Canada, so do please send me a DM directly, or send it to the MOD Education. I mean, if you want to send me a DM directly, it's at Duke Lagos, at Duke Lagos. So I'm the Duke of Lagos. Obviously, you can also email me at Michael at modeducation.info. Michael at modeducation.info. There's a question here as well. Somebody wants to know, will the pandemic affect the government's earlier plans to welcome 1 million new immigrants to Canada? I mean, this is obviously, this is central to our session today because we're looking at opportunities in Canada post-COVID. So do you think COVID is going to impact on the government's initial plan to welcome as many as 1 million people? I've got friends and families right now who are actually in Canada on the back of, government's plan to welcome new people. Do you see that changing, or that policy will remain?
I don't see that changing. I think the reason that is a clearly articulated goal for the country, and that is unique for Canada. I think when you look at some of the other countries, you're not seeing that sort of focus. Primarily, it's driven and based on demographics here in Canada. As you look at our 37 million odd Canadians and you contemplate current birth rates and economic growth, you can see that immigration is going to be a critical piece for Canada going forward, just in terms of growing our economy, maintaining our economy, and further developing our country. So certainly something like COVID could have an impact in the short term. But in the longer term, I think it's in Canada's best interest to stay on that path. And I don't really see that changing anytime soon.
Okay, thank you. Somebody asked here, in Nigeria, WAEC NECO has just been postponed indefinitely, and this might affect release of results. Would the application date still be affected or impacted by this? What I would say to you generally is Westerfield College, which I did talk about earlier, offers a Canada Foundation program, and we have loads of students who go from Westerfield to Canada every year. If you're a parent of a 16 or 17-year-old and there's a concern at this time, what I would recommend would be, of course, enroll your child at Westerfield College to start and then go on to Carleton, from next year, if you're concerned about this. But to answer your question directly, will the inability of students to secure their results early enough affect? So I think in essence, will Carleton accept students without results? I don't see that happening, but it's up to you.
Yeah, no, that is a fair question, and it's a good one, and it's one that we're being asked every day. Yeah, for sure. It's not just Nigeria. We've seen this in India as well with the cancellation of exams there, and many other countries too. IB students, A levels. I guess what I can say is we still require a high school leaving certificate, and we're flexible in terms of receipt of documentation and what we base our decision on. So while we still hold, obviously, on our criteria for having the same GPA, prerequisite subjects, etc., we are a little more flexible in terms of looking back at previous results, at anticipated final grades, or what the school is saying we see as being your final grades based on completed coursework to date. So overall, the common answer would be that we're looking at this on a case-by-case basis based on the individual students' circumstances, completed coursework, and what their high school is able to produce for us. So we're mindful of the situation. We understand the cancellations, and we're working with students to accommodate them nevertheless.
Right. Okay. But like I said earlier, the Canada Foundation program at Westerfield is a fantastic option, and that is what both myself and Rob will obviously recommend at this time, because it does help you, one, to get through the anxiety of when can I write WAEC. So just in case you have to write WAEC in August, for example, you can still join Westerfield in September, and of course be ready to go to Carleton by September next year. There's another question here. Somebody is asking, is in part 4, Nigeria runs a 4-year bachelor's degree program. So part 4 is the final year of a bachelor's degree in Nigeria. So this individual wants to know if he can transfer from Nigeria's 400 level. So in essence, this person will have transcript showing years 1 to 3. Will this person be able to transfer into a final year degree in Canada?
Yeah, we accept transfer students from within Canada and from around the world as well. So I guess what I could say broadly speaking is we're happy to look at transfer students and assess their completed coursework, and then award advanced standing or transfer credit into your new degree to the extent that we're able to. So provided you've studied at an accredited university and that the courses that you've taken there are germane to the degree that you're coming into at Carleton, you should be recognized for all of the completed coursework. The one requirement that is be good to be aware of is to get a Carleton degree, you have to complete a minimum of 1 year's worth of coursework at the university.
Right.
So the answer is yes, we would be happy to look at that student, assess the courses. After that assessment process has been finalized, we would give you an academic audit, which clearly indicates which courses apply towards the Carleton degree. And then you're able to sort of see, okay, 80% of the courses were recognized or 100%. The 1 degree program that is very difficult for transfer credit, of course, is engineering. Because engineering is such a managed program in terms of accreditation, being able to award an engineering degree requires us to have taught and ensure that a student has certain knowledge. So I would say engineering students are probably best to continue their studies at their home institution, as long as they haven't, maybe 1 year is fine, but 2-3 years becomes a bit risky. All other degrees, though, for sure, we're happy to assess for advanced standing based on coursework they completed at their home institution.
So in order for you to get assessed by a Canadian institution like Carleton for transfer, the most important document, along with all of the things that your counselor will tell you will be your transcript, it is mandatory that you secure an official transcript from your university, because to get credit awarded to you, it's going to be done on the basis of mapping of what you've done previously and what the university would have taught in its own similar years. So the outcome of that mapping is what determines whether you can actually get a place in the university or not. There's another question here. Is there an age limit to get to be accepted into Canada, to accept into Carleton?
Yeah, no, there isn't. So as far as Carleton's concerned, we're looking at your academics primarily. So we will assess a student based on their previous academic results, whether it's from a university, a college, a high school, WAEC. And if you meet the criteria, you have good grades, you've met the other things we're looking for, not an issue. The only time you might have challenges would be whether you're younger than 18, in which case, from the Canadian government's perspective, they're looking for a legal guardian to support you in your studies.
Right.
But the university itself, no.
Okay. So for under 18s, obviously you would need to get a legal guardian as part of the process to securing your visa. But then, like I said, Westerfield will be more than happy to keep you until you're 18. So of course, bring it on. Yeah. Somebody is asking here, is there a travel ban in Canada? Because this person is asking, I think they've secured their visa already, and they're asking, they want to resume. They're planning to resume in the fall. So is there currently a travel ban into Canada?
Yes, the borders for Canada are closed at this exact moment. So as of today, you can't come into Canada. But that said, this is a situation that is based on circumstances now, and the conversation here within Canada at this stage is the reopening. So there's certainly a cautious approach. I think Canada was an early adopter of restrictions. I think, once we identified this as being a major problem, working from home, other restrictions were put in place. So there's no lockdown here or anything like that, but social isolation is the norm and practice widely. because of those early efforts and because of all of the sacrifices people have made at this stage, we are seeing improvements. And because of those improvements, we're now at a junction where we can start to consider what might happen next. And we're certainly hearing that from the federal government and from the provincial governments as well.
Right. There's a question here from someone who wants to know, will Westerfield continue to offer classes? Yes, Westerfield will continue to accept students this September, and Westerfield will accepting students based on transcripts from SS1 and SS2. So we know that you can't write your WAEC right now. So if you do send your SS1 results, SS2 results, and SS3 first semester results, then Westerfield will be able to make you a conditional offer, and of course get you a conditional place into Carleton as well, so you're sure that you're progressing into Carleton. Interesting question here. Somebody is asking, why do Nigerians have to take IELTS to come to Canada? I mean, since we're English speaking country.
Yeah, that is not a Carleton requirement. So Carleton does recognize English language in Nigeria. And so because of that, Nigerian students are not asked for English proficiency tests as part of the application process. That said, the government does have this as a requirement. I guess it fits with wider policy. Anecdotally, I can say I had a colleague in my office who immigrated to Canada from the United States, who was obviously a natural English speaker, her first language and only language. And as part of her sort of process of becoming a permanent resident of Canada, she too had to write the English proficiency exams.
Wow, yeah.
So it's not...
Yeah, it's not a university, it's a government regulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
it's global. Yeah.
I'll just fly through this. So to help whoever asked that question, there are countries that are listed globally as majority English speaking countries. The countries listed as majority English speaking countries will be ones without any other national language. Nigeria doesn't have, Nigeria is not listed as part of those countries. Countries such as Barbados, the US, the UK, they do not have any other language apart from English. And that probably explains why Nigerians still have to write English, in spite of English being a medium of instruction across schools. But there are also other languages in Nigeria, and I think that explains why Nigeria still has to write the exam. I'll just fly through all these questions. Somebody wants to know, will admission requirements be waived into Carleton? Rob mentioned that already. Requirements are standard and they can't be waived because the university has to make decision on accepting you based on having met certain milestones in terms of academics. So those cannot be waived, unfortunately. Somebody wants to know if a 23-year-old can get a master's degree. Yeah, Rob mentioned that already. There is no particular age limit to apply to any program, so you can be 23 and apply. That's fine. Please, I need information on NSC. This recording will be on our page for 24 hours after today. So obviously you can go through that. But NSC is a special vehicle that's been piloted by the Canadian Immigration Authorities to ensure that Nigerians get faster decision on their student visas. And part of that requirement will be possession of IELTS, like I said. You have a CGP of 3.9 on a 5-point scale. So obviously this is a good one because 3.9 on a 5-point scale is a 2-1. So you should be able to apply to a master's degree in Canada. A student submitted an application to Public Health. You can send us a DM directly and we can discuss this later, regarding your specific, the specific course you want to apply to. Yeah. Sir, technological schools are 5 years. Okay, yeah. So somebody just corrected that in Nigeria, there are universities that offer 5-year programs, and that's correct. So traditional universities in Nigeria offer 4-year bachelor's degree programs. However, universities of agriculture and technology-based universities offer 5-year degree programs, and they are of the same weighting and quality. Somebody submits application to study for 1 month, and it's okay. Okay, somebody is asking if they can't get their official transcript from university. Yeah, unfortunately, if you need to apply to the university, like we said earlier, you need to get a transcript. So it will be impossible to review your application without a transcript. However, you can submit one, but a firm decision that would lead you to getting a visa cannot be made until the transcript is secured and sent to the university. So that is the position on that, unfortunately. Yeah, somebody asked if somebody submitted a study permit application to IRC, and for 1 month application to well, specific questions on your case. I mean, I would rather you send it to us directly, and we'll be able to advise you on that. So, Rob, as a Canadian, what do you think? And a lot of people are thinking of coming to Canada. I mean, one of the, like we did say, Canada is a very, very captive market. It's quite attractive. A lot of people want to know. I've seen on people's statuses in Nigeria where they actually Canada's National Day. People actually put that up as, oh, my country, and it's interesting, how that is. So to millions of those people out there on the streets of Lagos, London, or anywhere else in the world, post-COVID, what is the outlook of the country?
Yeah, I think pretty good. There's a huge amount of government spending right now to support Canadians as they weather the storm. So small business owners, people that may have been temporarily laid off from their employment because of the current circumstances with businesses not being open outside of the essential businesses. There's a strong effort to allow people to sort of retain and sustain this current circumstance and to relaunch once we're able to do so. And the relaunch conversation is actively happening now. So I think that there's the right infrastructure has been put in place to allow for a reopening that should help create a robust economy fairly quickly. To be sure, the impact of this will be felt for a long time within Canada and around the world. But I believe we're well prepared to take this on, to manage these challenges. And I think one of the ways, or one of the reasons that's the case is because we were well prepared for this before it started. So in terms of our government being in a good fiscal situation financially, and for the proper coordination to have taken place. So we expect and hope for things to improve really quickly once that starts.
You're right. That's so good. I mean, the answer to the topic of discussion for today, therefore, will be post-COVID, Canada is still a strong, welcoming, attractive, and safe place to go to should you want to either migrate to Canada or to go to Canada for study. Obviously, as a company, what we've always done as at MOD is to create, we believe that every one of us were born with inalienable rights of choice. It's our constitutional rights, and it's globally enshrined in a lot of conventions. We believe people should have a right to go anywhere they want to go in the world. But ultimately, what our business sets out to do is to create this opportunity so that people can access this, and of course, bring this wealth of knowledge and skills back to develop Nigeria. So Canada is still an attractive place to go to, but what we admonish, without prejudice to your choice of wherever you want to live and wherever you want to be permanently, is that we all take this opportunity and come back to Nigeria ultimately to grow and develop the Nigerian society. My dream as an individual, I'm not in Nigeria right now, but my dream as an individual is to leave Nigeria that is better than for my children than the one that I live in. I mean, we all complain about Nigeria not being a great place, but what are we doing about it? So what part of things we're doing about it right now will be some of us going away to different parts of the world to live, to get skills, to get education, to become better of ourselves. But ultimately, what our business and our company stands for is not to just get people to go away, but to get people to go away and come back and invest into making Nigeria better, so that the complaints that we're making right now will not be the same thing that our children will be making 50 years down the line. Rob, before I let you go, I'm going to ask one final question. I'll answer this. Somebody is asking that they have an OND and they want to know, can they apply to, and they're older. Generally, there's no rule in Canada about age, to be honest, but as a company that has been involved in in supporting students to Canada for many, many years. And we have, our company enjoys currently, the acceptance rate of Canada visa in Nigeria is something like 30%. But our business is very successful. We do have an enviable 90% or thereabouts in terms of our visa success. So as a company that is very experienced and knowledgeable in the visa process for Canada, what we have observed is that the older you are, the less likely that you'll be accepted for, your visa will go through, particularly if you're applying for an undergraduate. So if you're an older student, like you've just asked, and you have an OND, I mean, our recommendation will be applying to an undergraduate degree in Canada will not be the best approach. And these are not all written rules. These are just the way it is. So, I mean, that's what we can say. So before I let you go, the final question, like I said, is I've done it part-time. Okay, I've answered questions on age already. Yeah, so your final question, Rob, will be, does Carleton accept copies of personal transcripts? So what this means is, in Nigeria, apparently, some people have their own transcripts already in their possession. Will this be accepted by the university, or the university will accept transcripts to be issued either through WES or directly from the institution of study of students?
Yeah, at this stage, because of the requirement and need for flexibility, we're happy to look at unofficial transcripts in order to be able to make conditional offers, or conditional being that we would need to see the official documentation once it's available, when the universities reopen, but that you would be able to secure the letter of acceptance and the visa letter from the university, which would allow you to apply for the study permit. So we will not be holding up the process to wait for that information, probably.
Right.
And then as soon as you're able to get us the official documentation, then you would be able to send it at that time.
So that's good news. So if you do have your if you have your transcript with you on your person, that's good news. So you can obviously use that to apply to Carleton University at this time, pending when your pending when your official one will be issued. Because of course we know there's phased easing of the lockdowns in Nigeria, with the first phase coming up by the 4th of May, Monday. And we know gradually there'll be further easing. So universities and schools will open across the country within the next weeks or so. On this note, I'd like to say thank you very much, Rob. Any final word before I bring Stuart in?
Yeah, just a big thank you to you for facilitating this today. It's wonderful to have this conversation and to virtually meet everybody.
Thank you very much.
Follow-up questions are welcome. You can visit us we have live chats on our carleton.ca/international page every day. So you can join us for ongoing conversations if you have other questions.
Right. Thank you very much, Rob.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring Stuart to the conversation. Yeah. Rob, can you just end your session? I can't seem to be able to do it here. Technology. I mean, obviously, like I said, we're doing this across 3 continents. I mean, I'm in the UK right now. Rob is in Ottawa in Canada. And, you know, I don't know. This is just some technology. So is it possible for you to end your session?
Yep, I will.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Oh. Okay, good. Yep. So next I bring Stuart in to join us on this very interesting conversation. Stuart is the managing director of SJ Rennie Consulting. They work with a number of universities across the world, and Stuart has been the champion for Carleton for many, many years, developing the Carleton brand in Nigeria. So Stuart, to start with, you're a Scots. And what do you, I mean, talking about the pool of Canada, the former British Royals, I don't know if it's right to call them former British Royals, chose to make Canada their new home. Does that in any way, I mean, what does that mean to you as a Scot with regards to the strong pull of Canada as a destination? I mean, the Royals chose to live here, to leave the country, and they could be anywhere else in the world. Why Canada? What does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, good afternoon, Mike. Good afternoon, everybody who's listening across Nigeria and the wider African continent. and hello from Dunblane up here in Scotland. And as you can probably tell, I'm not Canadian. I'm from Scotland, got a Scottish accent, but I've been working with Rob, Carlton and Canada now for a number of years to develop their kind of footprint and relationship across Nigeria and Africa. Coming back to your question, Michael, why Canada? Why would someone choose Canada? Why would the Royals, I guess you're referring to Harry and Meghan, who have chosen Canada as a destination. Listen, there's a lot of history, and there's a lot of history from the country that I'm from, Scotland, with people migrating across to Canada for work-related employment opportunities. And I think the reason that people choose Canada is because it's seen, and Rob kind of hinted at this, that it's a very welcoming country. I think if you look at all the English-speaking countries across the world, whether that's the UK, whether it's Australia, the USA, or Canada, the rhetoric and the direction from government is very much geared towards positive immigration, towards welcoming international students, international entrepreneurs. And Canada needs highly talented individuals. So all the students back in Nigeria or back across Africa who currently have friends or relatives in Canada or aspire to maybe study in Canada, what they can and will receive when they choose to study in Canada will be a really welcoming and open country, a country that has great education systems, all of the universities being public universities, so government-backed universities, bringing in the quality across the education system. But more importantly, the employment opportunities across the country, which is supported by the Canadian government, and kind of stay back opportunities when they graduate as well. So it gives international students, when choosing Canada, that warm, welcoming reception supported by government, but also the opportunity when they finish to stay back and get some good relevant working experience, whether they then decide to stay on in Canada, or as you were saying earlier on, Mike, traveling back to Nigeria to ensure that those skills are transferred back to Africa as well, to help the development and entrepreneurial skills development back home in country.
Yeah. There's somebody made a comment that, you know, I should stay back in Nigeria because Nigeria needs me. Absolutely. And just not to mistake that, what I said earlier was not that Nigerians should go study and come back immediately. Of course, there are opportunities to stay back in the country. And I'm talking long term, because the bane of the country, you know, is been the fact that we do everything short term. So I'm not referring to my audience today who is saying, okay, all right, I want to go to Canada and stay there for 10 years or 5 years. No, I'm thinking 50 years. I'm thinking 60 years. I'm thinking when my children are in a place where I am right now. So sure. That's what I'm talking about. So it's not just so as not to be misunderstood. Canada welcomes and encourages people to stay back, and of course, we want you to take advantage of that, because anywhere you are, you're still an ambassador of Nigeria. Anyways, Stuart, one thing that is very paramount in the minds of a lot of students when they choose Canada is how can I earn some money while I'm working, while I'm studying, and of course, so the co-op structure is embedded in the Canada education system. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a number of options there, Mike. I mean, obviously, as an international student, when they're studying undergraduate degrees at the likes of Carleton University, two things here. They've got the opportunity on their Canadian study permit of doing some part-time work. So that will help towards their living expenses, will give them a little bit of experience, and just give them some experience of working in the Canadian culture. However, the real opportunity is for undergraduate students to take part in co-op programs. Now, what a co-op program is, it's embedded work experience as part of your study. And that could be anything between 4 months, 8 months, 12 months, 16 months. And certainly at Carleton, because of Carleton's location in Ontario and Ottawa, located in the kind of Silicon Glen area of Canada, very strong links to industry. So it's not only about preparing the student academically, it's about ensuring that the student will have the skills that employers are looking for when they finish. So when they apply to Carleton, they can choose to apply for co-op programs where they'll have the opportunity of being out working. The great opportunity with co-op is not only will they be earning money, and the minimum kind of hourly wage in Canada at the moment is about $14 per hour. So you've got the opportunity of earning money. But more importantly, when you actually graduate with your degree and that working experience, you'll have reference points, you'll have been out working in industry, you'll see how Canadian businesses operate. So you'll be in a really strong position to apply for full-time jobs when you finish as well. And I suppose the question that the students will be asking you, Mike, will be, how do I get those jobs? How will the university work with me to facilitate those opportunities? And I think what I see when I'm across at Carleton, I've been across to the campus a number of times, is a really strong international student support network. So whether that's through international student advice or through careers, all of these job opportunities will be promoted, they'll be advertised, the students will be given advice and support on preparing for interviews in Canada, preparing their CVs, so they're all in a strong position and will actually understand the process of applying for a job in Canada as well. So co-op experience, a fantastic way to embed yourself in Canada, earn some money, but get some experience working for some companies. I'm just looking at the kind of Carleton University Viewbook at the moment, Mike. And I mean, some of the companies that students at Carleton have worked at in the past will be real blue chip companies. Companies like BlackBerry, Ericsson, Hydro Ottawa, IBM Canada.
Wow.
So I'm sure your potential students will recognize some of these companies instantly.
I mean, those are names if you have on your CV, you can actually be sure that companies anywhere in the world will be looking at you and going, yeah, that's somebody who's worked in a major corporation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What is the process? So now I'm a student, I've chosen Carleton, I've chosen to go to Canada, I've done my co-op, I've done everything. What is the process thereafter for a student who chooses to stay back in Canada?
Okay, so I mean, in terms of actually staying back in Canada, the great thing at Carleton is within the university, we have a dedicated team who will be able to advise students on immigration, on their current status of their study permit, and also on the opportunities of staying back. And depending on the length of course they've studied, and there's some great information there out both on the Carleton website, and just like Rob mentioned, we did a webinar last week with Carleton University specifically for Nigerian students. So if you log on to carleton.ca, have a look at the webinar chats and international, there will be a specific one there that has looked at opportunities for Nigerian students, and there's a great video on that site at the moment from one of the international student advisors talking through applying for a study permit. That same person will be the person that students can speak to about stay back in Canada when they're there. So opportunities to stay back in Canada from 9 months up to 3 years, depending on the length of study they've done. And all of that information is available on the Canadian government site as well. Advising that.
Yeah, somebody is asking a question here. Please, can I get a fully sponsored scholarship to study masters, and how can I go about it?
Okay, so let me address the scholarship question for studying in Canada. So as Rob mentioned earlier on, we've been working across Nigeria and the wider African continent now for over 5 years for Carleton University. We recognise and we encourage strong academic grades. So certainly there are various scholarship opportunities at Carleton, and certainly one of the great things at undergraduate level is when students apply to Carleton directly, we will look at their grades. So we'll look at their school grades, whether they've studied WIAC, whether they've studied IB, whether they've done A-levels. And if they've got good gradings, and we work on a sliding scale for scholarships, these are entrance merit-based scholarships, but at the point of admission, we will look at the predicted grades or we'll look at the final grades, and there's some excellent scholarships in place. So a student could, at point of entry, depending on their grades, be offered anything between 1,000 and 4,000 Canadian dollars. But the great thing here is that's not just an entrance scholarship. Provided they keep up the grades and their progression at Carleton, that scholarship will be awarded every year. Awarded every year. So you've got entrance merit-based scholarships. You've also got scholarships in place Once they have their offer, they can apply for faculty scholarships or provost scholarships. So there's a good, strong, comprehensive scholarship package available at Carleton.
As somebody who is involved with Westerfield, I can tell you that a lot of Westerfield students have gone to Carleton, and of course, I know if almost everyone at Westerfield does get some kind of scholarship to, whilst they're going to Carleton. So it's worthy to know that this will be kept and for the entire length of their degree in Canada.